Hello, this is Mark from tradingform.com and welcome to this video on how to create an expert advisor for a SuperTrend trading strategy. What I'm showing on the screen at the moment is the article on tradingform.com that is designed to accompany this video, and there is a link on the screen if you would like to read this article. And if you're new to programming with MQL4 language, I suggest you click on the link and have a look through this article. Okay, so what I've got open here is what many of you will be familiar with. This is Meta Editor. It is the piece of software that we use for writing and editing our MetaTrader programs. It is supplied free with MetaTrader 4, and it is quite a useful program that we can use to check our mistakes, and then once we've got our completed program or our completed expert advisor, we can use this to compile it into a form that can be read by MetaTrader 4 and subsequently to run it using the MetaTrader 4 terminal. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go through all the steps, the inputs that are required in the expert advisor, or in this particular expert advisor, and I'm going to show you that there is quite a lot of information, as you would expect, that go into an expert advisor that is checking quite a number of things, going through the market, opening and closing trades on your behalf, carrying out calculations. It is doing quite a lot of work, but you'll see by going through this video that we can break this down, and after this video many of you will be able to use this information to edit this particular expert advisor, change things, add new technical indicators, and generally refine or change it as you like. As I go through this, it will take time to go through all the input, but bear with me, in the end it should make sense. Okay, so starting right at the very top of our program here, we've got some grayed out information. This is general information about the expert advisor, and a little bit further down we have similar grayed out information. We signify this by using 2 forward slashes, and we do this so that we can make notes within the program. Good idea, it's good practice to make notes within the program so that you or anybody else that subsequently comes to look back, open this program up and wonder what is going on at any particular point, will be able to refer to these notes. Any time that we put a line in that begins with these two, you don't need the dashes, begins with these 2 forward slashes, we can put in whatever notes we like here. Okay, going further down we're going to use hash property to again provide information that is not used in the calculation, but this information will be available to the terminal. We're going to use hash property for copyright, hash property for a link. You can put in, of course, whatever information you like at this point. Next we're going to use hash define, and we're going to use define long trade and a short trade. These are constants that we're going to use to, as the name suggests, long trade and short trade, to define when the program will be opening a long trade and when it will be opening a short trade. Okay, so again we have these 2 forward slashes, external inputs required. We use the word extern to signify external inputs. These external inputs are very important for our expert advisor. These are user entered information that can be easily edited, and also that we can use as part of the backtesting process. So any variables that we want to try different values, we may want to manually edit at any stage, we'll call a external input. The first one of these, we've called it an extern, and int refers to an integer. We're telling Meta Editor and subsequently MetaTrader 4 what type of information this is, what type of variable is it. It is an integer, it is a whole number, and we're telling it the magic number, which is a unique reference number specifically for an expert advisor, so that it knows which trades it has opened itself. The only important thing for the magic number is that it is unique for every expert advisor that you have running on your system. You give it a unique magic number. Again, we're using an integer type of information. Slippage refers to the maximum allowed deviation from the price that the expert advisor decided to make a trade, and from the price available when it was able to actually take that trade. We're using extern again, but this time we're using a double. Double refers to a real number that has a decimal point in it. So 1.5 would be a double type number, as would be 1.3145. Percentage per trade. This is an idea that I like to use in most of my trading strategies, and in my other, if you've seen any of my other backtesting videos, I like to use this idea of risking a certain percentage of our capital per trade. And I've set here a default value of 1, which refers to 1%, so that we're risking each trade that the expert advisor is opening, it will know to automatically risk 1% on that particular trade. The next piece of information we're using is bool, which refers to boolean. Boolean can only have two answers. It can either be true or it can be false, and this particular variable is called use stop loss, which is self-evidently whether or not we want the expert advisor to use a stop loss. The next external input is our ATR multiplier, our stop loss ATR multiplier. Again, this is a concept that I like to use, and this is to set our stop loss value as a percentage of our average true range, so that we know that each time we've got our stop loss, it is based on how volatile any particular market has been over a set number of recent periods. The next thing we're looking at is use take profit. So we're telling the expert advisor whether or not to use our take profit, our profit target, and again we're using an ATR multiplier to set this profit target, and here we are setting a value of 5, so that we will, if we enter a trade on this basis, we will have a maximum reward to risk ratio of 5 to 1. When I initially set out this trading strategy, I didn't use a trailing stop, but these are quite useful. They can improve the profitability of a trading strategy, and we would like to have our expert advisor to at least have the option of using a trailing stop. Here I've set it the default value to false, but we can toggle this on to true and see how the strategy works with and without a trailing stop. The next one is our trading stop ATR multiplier, and below this we are going to set a variable referring to our SuperTrend indicator that is used as part of the trading strategy. So we're setting here the SuperTrend multiplier of 2. Again, we can use the backtesting function to test different values if we want to. Okay, the trading strategy that we're looking at today uses a EMA, an exponential moving average, to close trades, and we're setting our default value of that EMA at 25 periods. It also uses an SMA, a simple moving average, as a filter to determine the long-term market direction, and we've got our default initial value as 200 periods, And finally, the last of our external inputs refers to the start and the finish time. This is so that we are able to tell the expert advisor to trade only on at specific times. The Forex market, which is mostly what people use MetaTrader 4 to trade, is open 24 hours a day. However, it does not mean that every time period is equally suitable necessarily for opening a trade. So we're going to use our start time and finish time to set limits on when the expert advisor can open new trades. Okay, I'm going to scroll down here through the program. We're not going to put anything in the initialization or the deinitialization function. Everything, all the calculations and the trading functions are going to be within the start function. Now, start is very important for expert advisors. The start part of the program will run every time a new tick is received, which means that every time the price changes by a minimum amount, we will have a new tick, and this program will run through from top to bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is declare some integer variables. So we know what integers are, and we've got here the count. This we're going to use at a later stage to count from 0 to 1 to 2. The ticket is going to be referring to our trade ticket. The order we are going to use for our open and for our opening long and short trades, and current time we're going to use to identify what the time is, so that the expert advisor knows when it is and when it isn't allowed to open trades. So here we have again the 2 forward slashes, and this little program here is going to, or this little piece of code is going to check at least 100 bars of data are available. This is just a fail-safe check. If we haven't got enough information on the screen to calculate all our technical indicators, our inputs, we don't want the expert advisor to run. So we're just checking that we've got at least this minimum amount of data already in there. Okay, so the next little part, we're going to calculate the number of lots per trade. So we know we've worked it out on a percentage. In fact, we've entered the amount of percentage we want for our stop loss. We've told how much we want to risk. We're going to use this program here, this code here rather, to turn this into the number of lots per trade automatically. We're going to identify these different variables. We're going to, these are double type variables. Capital, which refers to the amount in the trading account. The capital risked, which is the value of the amount risked per trade. The stop loss amount is the number in pips of the stop loss. Lots traded is what the information that we need to get out of this, and the ATR is the average true range, and the point value identifies how many what the minimum change is going to be, the minimum change for your particular broker. So if you have a broker that gives you 4 decimal points after the 0, this is usually referred to as 1 pip change if you go from 0 to 1. If you have 5, if you have a 10 change, you have a point value of 5. So the ATR here, we've identified it. The ATR is an inbuilt technical indicator. The MetaTrader 4 will know how to calculate ATR, and so we can just use the variable I ATR, give it this information here, and it will calculate a 20 period ATR up to the previous bar from the current one. Point value uses the value point, which is specific to your broker. It's normally going to be to 4 or 5 decimal places. Capital, again we have this is going to be vary all the time potentially. This is called account free margin. Now we're going to calculate our capital risk, and this is the capital multiplied by the percentage per trade as a percentage. Our stop loss amount, this is the stop loss amount in pips, is going to be the ATR multiplied by our stop loss ATR multiplier, which was an external input, and our point value. And then finally we're going to get this variable lots traded. This will tend to vary on every single trade, because the volatility of the market will be constantly going up and down, and so we will have different number of lots traded, but we will be risking a constant amount relative to the size of our account. Okay, the next section we're going to identify and calculate our technical indicators. The first one of these is a custom indicator. This is because SuperTrend is not one of the technical indicators that comes supplied with MetaTrader 4. However, there are many different versions, custom indicator versions of it, and this is the information that the custom indicator requires that I'm using for this Expert Advisor. It's a double type information, so we will have decimal points in here, and we've got two versions of it, SD1 and SD2. The only difference between the two of these is SD1 is the SuperTrend calculated up to the previous bar, to the current one, so it's a completed bar. The current bar is never a completed bar, and one period below this. So this is signified by the 1 and the 2, the numbers at the end of the information here. If we go down to the next technical indicator, we're using we've called it SMA 1 and 2, and this is a inbuilt technical indicator, IMA, and this we can use to calculate a number of different types of moving average, and we have to change the mode to tell it which type of moving average we want. In this case we're using the mode SMA. The length of it is defined by the SMA length, which again is one of our external inputs. We've told it in this case to use the closing price, and again we're taking it from the previous bar, the completed bar. Very similar here for the exponential moving average, and again at the ends it is very similar for the iClose, which refers to the closing price. Okay, now we're getting closer to the actual process of entering trades. We're going to tell MetaEditor and MetaTrader 4 what conditions we want for entering a long trade. Now this is the trading strategy that we're going to be following. We enter long when the closing price is above the 200 SMA and crosses from below to above the SuperTrend, or when the closing price is above the SuperTrend and crosses from below to above the 200 SMA. So in MQL4 language, we're going to write this out as the information here. If the close 1 is greater than the SuperTrend and the close 2 is lower than ST2 and the close 1 is greater than our SMA 1, our order equals long trade, which, as you remember, is one of the constants we defined at the start of the program. Okay, so we've got the information here for the two different ways that we can enter a long trade, and then the two different ways we can enter a short trade. Next we want to check the trading time. We've already said that we want this expert advisor, we want to be able to limit it so it can't open trades at times that aren't appropriate for this type of strategy. We're using the current time as the hour, and so we're just saying we could make it even more specific. We could set minutes if we want, but as we're using a strategy that's going to be run on the 1 hour time frame, this is specific enough for us. Okay, so the next piece of coding is going to identify the number of trades allowed. We're saying here in this case that EA total, and EA total refers to the number of trades that have been launched just by this expert advisor. You may well want to have an expert advisor loaded into your terminal, and at the same time you're entering multiple manual trades, or you may want to have a different expert advisor also opening and closing trades. We want to tell this expert advisor that it's only able to open one trade at a time, and we're going to do this first of all by counting, using this information here to count the number of trades by a magic number, so by our unique identifying number, and then finally we're going to set the information here to make sure that the number of trades is less than 1, in other words it's 0. Okay, so if the order which you set earlier is equal to long trade, we've gone through all the steps, we've passed all the hurdles, we want the expert advisor to go ahead and to open a trade. We first of all look at if use stop loss. If we're going to use this stop loss that we've calculated, we're going to have to calculate what it is at this specific moment. So we're going to use this piece of code here to identify what the actual value it should be. We're going to take, if we enter a long trade, we're going to always use the asking price, and if we're not using a stop loss, the program will know to automatically not set a stop loss level, to leave it at 0. It does exactly the same for the use take profit. And then finally we get to the point where we use the order send command. We put in our information, we're not making it specific, we can let the expert advisor run on any market we like, so we're going to leave the symbol as a blank basically. We're going to tell it that it's going to be a buy, op buy. The lots traded, we've already calculated this, so this is going to be specific to that moment. How many lots do we need to trade given our level of risk, given our amount of stop loss, how many lots we're going to trade. We're going to buy at the asking price. Our maximum slippage we've set. If we're using a stop loss level, what values are we going to use? We're going to enter our magic number so we know which expert advisor has entered this trade. It's not just appeared out of nowhere, and we're going to call it, and we're going to give the colour as green. If this was successful, we're going to use order select to identify that we have our trade open correctly, so we've got a buy order opened and at the price that it was actually opened at. We've got a little piece of code here to check if this is not the case, if we've got a problem, what is the problem. We use get last error, and this will use a series of codes to tell us what is going on, why our EA has not opened the code correctly. Okay, then we have the mirror image. We have if order is equal to short trade. We do exactly the same thing except in reverse. Okay, now as the information says here, we need to check once we've gone through all this. Maybe we've got a position open. We're going to have to count. Again, we're going to have to count to see whether or not our expert advisor has got a position open. If it has, we need to see whether or not what the order type is, and we need to identify that it's got the right position open. We don't want it to close some other expert advisor or close a manually opened position. We need to set our criteria here, and the criteria that we're using is if the closing price is lower than the EMA in the finished bar, and if the previous bar to that it was higher, then these are the conditions that we require to close. So we send order close and tell it to close the position. But there is another thing that we want to do, and this we haven't discussed it so far, and this is check the trailing stop. Although we're not using it in our initial settings, we may well require a trailing stop at one stage, and as we've got that trailing stop, we need to see if we don't want to close the position, well then should we move the trailing stop? In other words, has the latest tick moved the position more in our favour, and so we need to move our trailing stop accordingly. First of all, we're going to check if we're even using the trailing stop, and if we are, should it be moved. We're going to use the order modify to make sure we've got the right thing, make sure we've got the correct order, and then we're going to move it by the amount that is implied by our trailing stop, ATR multiplier, and the ATR. Okay, so we use the command else to look at whether or not exactly the same things should be changed for our short position. Okay, so we've gone through there, and the final thing we're going to do is we're going to tell the program to return. So if it's gone through all of those steps and it's not done any of them, we know to return. We know to start at the beginning and wait for the next tick, and when the next tick comes along, it's going to do all the same again and go back to start, and it's going to keep cycling through start to one of the returns for as long as it is loaded onto the chart. Okay, so we've gone through the expert advisor here, and you can see that there is a lot of information required, but there is also a lot of ways that we can change this, we can tweak this. As I said at the start of this video, have a look at the article that is on tradingforum.com. There is more information on this article, and I think from this, please leave any comments referring to this video, anything else you would like, any clarification you would like. The next video I'm going to record in this sequence is going to look at how we can take this trading strategy, how we can backtest it, and how we can refine it, and what sort of results we're going to get from it. So I hope you found this useful, and for more information about trading, about economics, and about backtesting trading strategies, please go to www.tradingforum.com.